Hey Molly, how's it going? Hi Clancy.
Hey Joe, how's it going?
Good.
Good.
Hey Rob, you came in as Molly. Did you use her login?
Yeah, I like pretending that I'm Molly.
Okay. Do you need me to resend yours at next time? Because you should get one every a reminder.
Yeah, I maybe if it could be sent to my personal email or something,
Okay.
um, which I can give you.
Okay.
Can I change? I could probably change it though, right?
I got your name changed up there right now.
Okay, thank you.
So I have 4 o'clock on my computer, but I say we do. Morgan's not with us yet, so we should just wait a few minutes.
I know Morgan was dealing with some issues. He should be on in a minute or two.
Hey everybody, I'm here, but my battery is low on this device, so I'm gonna not have my video going.
Sounds good. And with that, I know we have a full agenda. I believe, did I see Morgan there? Yep, he's connecting to audio. But he doesn't need to hear this first part. I'm going to read the welcome script. And then after that, we will approve the minutes from the January 4th, 2021 and February 1st, 2021 meetings. So first, welcome to the Conservation Lands Advisory Committee for March 1st, 2021. All the meeting body members are attending from a remote location. We are holding this meeting virtually, so we'll be doing public comment a little differently than usual, although it's the new usual, via a live call-in phone line, just like calling into a radio show or to make a pledge during a telethon. I'll call for general public comment, and on that item, I will take comments on items that are on the agenda and items that aren't on the agenda. I will also open the public comment phone lines on each agenda item. Each time we call for public comment, we'll put the numbers on the screen and the meeting ID and give some time for you to go to your phones and call in. But you may want to write them down. When you call in, you'll be placed into a waiting room and I will take calls in the order they come in. When I call on you, please mute your TV or computer or there will be an echo. Tell us your name and your comment. Please be aware there is a delay of about 50 seconds from what you're hearing at home in the actual meeting. So it's okay to begin speaking right away when I call on you. I'll be observing a speaking limit of 3 minutes so we can hear from everyone. Let's get started. I'd like to call the meeting of the Conservation Lands Advisory Committee to order. Can we have a roll call of members to determine who is present?
Liz Bradley, Patrick Bigam, Beverly Dupree,
Present.
Carol Fisher,
Here.
Tegan Hayes, Kathleen Kennedy,
Here.
John O'Connor, Karen Sippy,
Here.
Hannah Speck, Jameson Starbuck, I see them, but on the list, but they're not responding. Volume. Giles Thielen.
Present.
Okay.
Did you hear me, Jameson? Sorry, I forgot to unmute.
Yeah, I didn't hear you. Go ahead. I got you
Okay.
now.
Okay.
And so I just see that we're missing Hannah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, did you guys have a chance? Well, I'm going to assume you had a chance to review the 2 agendas from January 4th, 2021 and February 1st, 2021. Are there any changes or a motion to approve, please? Yeah, Kathleen?
I was just looking at the February minutes and it looks like there might be some typos in the last section. Maybe I'm misreading it, but the update, it says the city did get an engineering plan for the removal of Kinley Lake Dam up. Is that supposed to be dam?
Yeah.
So I'm under 4. And Clark's Fork River. I don't know. Maybe I'm being picky. And then the conservation lands manager update on maintenance activities and discussion of future clock agenda items is just there twice. So I don't know if that's
Yeah.
intentional.
Okay, I see those. So, do we have a motion to approve the agendas with the said changes in the February 1st, 2021 meeting?
I would make that
Correct.
motion.
I'll second.
All right. Well, is there any opposition to the changes or the corrections in the agenda from the last two meetings?
I think you mean to say minutes, but
Minutes, I'm
I
sorry.
forgot.
Thank you, thank
We
you,
know what
thank
you
you.
mean.
That's a good point. Okay, hey, Hannah. All right, well, good enough. Then let's carry on with the, I guess this is the time for us to give the public, if there's any, is there any public out there looking to comment?
I don't see any hands up.
Okay, well, we'll move on to item 3, our discussion item, update on Missoula's Clark Fork River Access and Restoration Project. And we have Nathan with us. Hi, Nathan.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to share my screen. So let me know if you can see this slide. Yeah, okay. So my name is Nathan Mcleod. I am Parks and Trails Design and Development Specialist for the city of Missoula. And I don't get to present to you folks that often, but I feel like every time I do, it's about something that I think is really neat. So this is another one of those times. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Clark Fork River Restoration and Access Project. And I think that you all are probably familiar with this to some extent. What we're going to be doing this week, we'll be presenting this to City Council. We are going to be asking City Council to approve the professional services contract with the Respect Company in the amount not to exceed $245,616 for the design and engineering of this project. So, quick background. So for many years, the Clark Fork has been this working river. It's supported industry, transportation, agriculture, and mining. All of this industrial use of the river has left its mark. With the removal of Milltown Dam in the last couple of years and cleanup of mining waste, there have been dramatic improvements to water quality, and the Clark Fork has undergone a renaissance. That renaissance has been river recreation. So river recreation in the last few years has really exploded, in particular within the Missoula city boundary, so kind of the urban section of river. Residents and visitors alike now consider the river to be one of our community's greatest assets. In 2018, City of Missoula Parks and Rec staff, as well as other partners, did a couple river use surveys of floaters along the Madison Street footbridge and other sections of the river in town. We found that on average, on a sunny Missoula day in the summer, there was about 58 floaters per hour that came down under the Madison Street footbridge. And now this is in addition to the many, many people that are walking in on to the river. So, walking down the banks to put their feet in, to go swimming, to throw the ball for their dog. So there's a lot of activity around the river. So all of this activity and Missoula's newfound love of the river has created a lot of erosion problems on the banks. So this, these significant erosion problems are creating, are detrimental to the habitat along the banks of the river. So people are trampling vegetation. The erosion is causing problems with water quality. And then also there's potential for the erosion to actually impact existing infrastructure, such as this picture showing the river trail and how close this erosion is getting to that trail. So it is a problem. It's something that we've been looking at for a while. And so in 2014, there was a community river visioning process where participants from multiple agencies and stakeholders came together, and everyone kind of agreed that river access and stream bank health were really important issues that needed to be addressed in Missoula. So in the fall of 2015, the city of Missoula, the Water Quality Department, and the Clark Fork River Coalition secured funding and hired the RESPEC engineering and landscape architecture team to evaluate and categorize riverbank and riparian conditions along the south bank of the river through downtown Missoula. So this map shows some of the findings from that process. The area that we initially looked at was basically from California Street Bridge along the south bank of the river all the way east to Jacobs Island Dog Park. So what we're going to be doing with this next round is we're actually expanding the scope of that. We're including both the north and the south bank, all the way from Riverside Park, which is just west of Russell Street, up all the way to Ben Hughes Park in East Missoula. And so this map is kind of conceptual, but it gives a sense of what we've been looking at. So there are proposed riverbank restoration sites, as well as proposed river access improvements all along this stretch of river. So in 2015 and 2016, the RESPEC team created conceptual level access and restoration treatments for 34 identified sites along the river. This is showing kind of an example of a hardened river access. So this is like stair steps that would get down to the water. And this image here is showing some restored banks as well as access to a small beach, which is pretty common along this stretch of river. This is a more intensive design showing what it might look like at Toole Park, which is a really highly used access point. And then this is an example underneath the Higgins Avenue Bridge of where we could use hardened river access to actually provide ADA access down to the river. So not only was access important, but obviously riverbank stabilization and habitat restoration is a major part of this project. And so again, with 2016, they created concepts for many locations along the project area, showing kind of a prescriptive way of restoring the banks along the river. And this is something that we'll be able to utilize not only in this stretch, but could be utilized beyond. So this is another view of that river access concept in Toole Park. And this is an example from the North Riverside Parks and Trails Master Plan, which was just adopted in December. So this is at Caras Park, showing an example of what the access could look like in that pretty highly developed park. So this is showing an ADA accessible ramp that gets folks all the way down to the river. Whether you have a mobility impairment, if you're a child, if you're a senior, you can actually get down to the water and touch it. And that's one thing that we've heard from people a lot throughout this process is that they really like being able to see the river, but getting to the water can be difficult for a lot of folks, especially in Missoula where the banks are, they're really steep. They're primarily levees. And so getting down from this elevation up high down to the river can be difficult in a lot of places. And so providing universal access in particular locations is a really important goal from this project. So we just finished a request for qualifications, and the RESPEC team was selected as the most qualified team to take those conceptual plans created in 2016 and develop the designs into a 100% bid-ready permitted project, meaning that when we're done with this contract, we will be ready to go to construction. So the goals for this round of the project are, number one, to inventory and monitor riverbank erosion and identify user-made access locations along the river, to create and affirm the site selection criteria for riverbank restoration and or access enhancements that was developed in 2015, and to design and construct an intuitive system of walk-in access points for a variety of river users, which should encourage responsible recreation and promote the health and aesthetics of the Clark Fork in Missoula. And then 4, we'll design and implement a restoration program to sustainably restore impacted riverbank locations throughout the project area and potentially beyond. So this is kind of like, we'll be creating these prescriptive restoration treatments that we could be utilizing not only in Missoula in the city, but beyond. So think about Tower Street and other conservation lands where we might be able to use this prescriptive treatment for impacted riverbanks. So funding for the project is primarily at this point through the 2018 Missoula County Open Space Bond. The bond measure included up to $1.5 million for development of sustainable river access and riparian restoration along the Clark Fork within the open space planning boundaries. $225,000 was allocated for phase one, which is this phase, which is to develop the construction ready and permitted designs. The remaining funds will be leveraged with other potential funding sources and will be used for project construction. So the professional services contract that we have today includes $198,080 of design and engineering fees, as well as permitting. The optional $47,536 is for construction administration and bidding. And this is an amount that we will potentially use if we move forward into construction. And so one thing that may happen is that we may not have funding to implement the entire project at once. And so we may take a portion of it, say, for example, the Tool Park access site, and we might move forward with that, which would utilize a portion of this $47,000 for construction administration. Obviously, funding is ongoing, and it's something that we'll be working with our various partners on the project moving forward. The total contract amount is $245,616. And that is my slideshow.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Hi, everyone. I think one of the goals for bringing Nathan forward, I know you guys have been tracking this project for quite a while, since kind of its inception, but we actually this year are officially kicking off what I would call implementation of the project. And so, you know, this is really a team effort between a lot of folks here at Missoula Parks. The presentation that you guys just saw, and you know, Nathan might have mentioned it there at the very beginning, but you know, we're getting ready to roll this out as part of a larger public open house so that people can get up to speed with the work that's been done in the past and what's getting planned moving forward. And so, as you guys know, it's always nice to be able to bring this kind of stuff to this group and kind of bounce it off everybody, and certainly provide opportunity for questions or feedback and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, thanks, Nathan, for agreeing to show us what you got. I think he's done an incredibly good job of distilling a bunch of very big projects into a really tangible presentation, because we've got multiple different park master planning processes, and then, you know, a 6 to 7 year process to kind of envision the grander scope. And so I think it's been a real challenge to really encapsulate it all down into something that can really be, you know, consumed by the public, and then allow them to provide input. Nathan, did you mention at all about the Engage Missoula site or any of that kind of stuff? That might be.
No, but that's something that I think that we would definitely want to reach out to all you folks and have you kind of spread the word. You know, we're not going to be designing this in a box. We want input from the public. This is, I mean, the river is such an important asset to our community, and everyone, you know, everybody has an opinion about it, right? And so we do have an Engage Missoula website that we'll be launching in the next couple of weeks. It includes a survey that's about 5 minutes long for folks to come in and fill out. All the documents that we have developed in the past, in that past 2015 process, are up online. So people can review those and kind of dive in as deep as they want. But yeah, so we'll be having a round of kind of a virtual open house because of COVID. You know, I think normally we would have something in person, but we found that Engage Missoula actually is really effective. We're actually able to reach probably more people than we normally would with an in-person event than, you know, in the past. So we'll start out with this open house. Following that, we'll have a series of stakeholder meetings that involves the consultants. So that's going to be with permitting agencies, you know, with different river community groups. And so we'll be, you know, soliciting input from all these different groups in Missoula. Following that, we're going to have another open house, kind of around 60% design development, so that we can again ask people to affirm or, you know, or give us suggestions for where we're headed with the design. And then we'll have more, you know, another round of stakeholder meetings, making sure that we're on track so that we don't come out with this plan that's 100% designed and people are like, whoa, that's not what we thought, you know, that's not what we thought you were doing. So.
Thank you, Nathan. I have a quick question. It seems like the Corps of Engineers aren't they real persnickety about what goes on with the shores there, or is that what do you think the biggest hurdles would be? The designs look awesome. That'd be so fun to have that kind of access to the river, and it's really exciting. I just wonder what the biggest hurdles are since the money is there.
You know, I had a conversation with the Corps of Engineers on that North Riverside Parks and Trails project, and I will quote what they said to me. They said, with enough time and money, you can do anything.
Perfect.
So we're good to go. No, I think there's going to be hurdles for sure. You know, one thing that's really important is that we're not working within the stream. So this is a bank restoration project, and that's going to simplify permitting a lot. The Corps is going to be, you know, we're going to have to get permits through the Army Corps for this project because a lot of the river is a certified levee. And it's built into the project. I don't think, you know, I feel like we're on track and we're going to be fine. We're going to engage with the permitting agencies early on in the process so that we don't get to the end and then they say, hey, you can't do this. We're going to make sure that they are on board for the whole process.
Nathan, I had a question.
Yeah.
You talked about partners, which you're sort of saying you're checking with everybody, but you didn't mention who are the existing partners for this right now, or is it too long to give out?
There's a lot of people that are involved. Some of our major partners are the Clark Fork Coalition is really involved, Water Quality District, and then other portions of the city of Missoula, you know, like stormwater. They are the ones who actually do most of the management of the levees. So those are our primary partners. We do have a whole list of stakeholders that are involved in the process. You know, the Three Rivers Collaborative is a good example of a lot of people that have been involved in this process.
Okay.
And Morgan might be able to speak to some other specific folks.
Yeah, I think you nailed them. I think it is worth noting, and you've got a better feel for this than I do, Nathan, but the level of involvement, especially from our downtown businesses when we did the master plan for all those riverfront parks down there, I think we have a whole bunch of partners that were kind of stimulated through that process that I could see directly kind of translating or moving into this project.
I was curious about Trout Unlimited. Have they been involved at all?
They have not. Yeah, not on this one. This project really started out shortly after the Milltown Dam was removed. On my bike commutes to work, I started to notice a bunch more user accesses, and that's where we really initially formed and engaged Clark Fork Coalition and the Water Quality Department, because we were trying to get the south bank of the river we wanted to keep it from looking like the north bank of the river, which is just all angular riprap. And that really started the beginnings of this project that then spurred into, quite honestly, kind of planted the seeds for the development of the Three Rivers Collaborative, and also all those recreational use surveys that we've done in partnership with the Clark Fork Coalition all kind of came out of these initial meetings 6-7 years ago between these kind of key players that try to start to do some planning in this region. And with the passage of the open space bond, unfortunately, it's really hard to fund planning. Once you have a permitted designed project, everybody wants to throw money in to build it, but it's hard to fund the planning. And so we were unsuccessful. We got some grants early on. We got like a $50,000 grant, and then have not been able to generate enough money to really get our planning done, like full engineering and permitting. And that's where the passage of the open space bond and the ability to use some of that money for a capital project is the seed money that's going to get us through planning and permitting. And then we're going to really cast the net over the next year to bring in money to do construction.
I had one other question. Are we going as far downstream as the Klaus property?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
You know, one thing that I will say about that, though, is I think a lot of these river restoration prescriptive treatments, and that when I say that, it's not like construction documents for every restoration spot, because there's just so many, you know, little pathways or spots along the bank that have been eroded. Some of these prescriptive treatments we'll be able to utilize well beyond this reach of river. So, I mean, it could even be utilized by other agencies or other groups of people, other landowners that might be looking to restore banks.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I think we will be able to have some kind of boilerplate kind of prescriptions in some of these locations, especially under bridges and whatnot. So.
Hey, Nathan,
Thank you, Nathan.
when will this be up on Engage Missoula? Do you know?
Yeah, so we're going to wait till it goes to City Council first.
Okay.
So we're going to present tomorrow to Parks and Conservation Committee. It'll go to City Council for approval, hopefully on the consent agenda next Monday, and then we'll plan on launching it on Tuesday. So that's the 9th, is that right? Yeah, March 9th.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Morgan.
Yeah, so there's gonna, well, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, does his 58 floaters an hour under the Madison Bridge jive with what your counts were on the original count a few years back?
That's from that report.
Oh,
yeah, that's the average over the entire summer.
Okay. But that's not from 2020 then?
That's 2018.
Right.
I think I wanted to mention just in reference to Carol's question about downriver, the Klaus property. One thing we did see in our 2015 survey and then again in 2018, where we cast the net a little bit wider as far as our surveys, there's really not a ton of use beyond. We really want to address like core Missoula takeout. And the trend that we really kind of captured both times was that there's a lot of people putting in above town, floating into town and taking out. Once you get to a certain point, past Russell to Reserve, it really does slow down. And then the river gets a lot more dangerous as it gets into those braided sections. And so use through that section is a lot less. Granted, as development moves down that direction, it could be very different. But there's so many unknowns as big irrigation diversions and other infrastructure. And so my inclination is at some point we will need to do broader planning for some of that area of town, but we're not there yet. We're not seeing the immediacy that we're seeing in this stretch between Hellgate Canyon and Russell Street.
Morgan, I did bring it up only because we talked about a possible access point by the water treatment plant. And even though we're not planning for this, it seems like it's an opportunity to be thinking ahead before we do get the use possibly.
Yeah.
Can you throw that out too?
I think that's a very good point. Yeah. And I could see a lot of what we do in this stretch being very informative for doing any other planning for a takeout down on that into town if we decide that one's needed.
Any other questions for Nathan or Morgan on the river access? Well, in here we'll pause and let I'm going to read from my agenda. We're on agenda item 3.1, update on Missoula's Clark Fork River Access and Restoration Project. If you'd like to comment on this item, we're going to open the phone lines and we'll take a comment after the staff report. I'm going to read the numbers. They're going to go on the screen now. People with vision difficulties, the numbers are 1-267-831-0333 and 1-888-475-4499. Our meeting ID today is 960-049-3694. We'll answer calls in the order received. I will call on you by your phone number. And please be sure to mute your TV or computer. Tell us your name and what's on your mind. We'll be observing a speaking limit of 3 minutes so we can hear from everyone. Again, be sure to mute your TV or computer so there's no echoes. I don't see any hands raised. So we will move on to our action item 4.1, Mount Deanstone Recreation and Special Resource Management Plan, presented by Morgan Valiant.
Yeah, thanks guys. And so Clancy and I are going to be kind of tag teaming this to kind of remind you where we're at in the process. We are wrapping up the Mount Deanstone Preserve Recreation and Special Use Management Plan. Typically, as we develop these plans, I really see these as kind of almost appendices or chapters to our greater conservation lands management plan. And they're really focused on how we're going to manage people on these sites, how people are going to interact with these sites. We've been developing this plan for about a year now, a little bit more. At our last meeting, the group agreed that it was at a point where we are ready to cast it out to an official public comment period. You made a recommendation to Missoula's Park Board to set a 2-week public comment period. That just ended last week. And a lot of the documents that were attached to your minutes are a synopsis and a summary of those public comments. So our role here today, and I'm going to let Clancy walk us through a lot of the public comment report, and we're going to individually address comments in that report. He's done the majority of the heavy lifting on drafting of this plan, and also putting together the synopsis of the public comment period. And so really our role today is to go through these comments and review them, talk about them, figure out if we need to make edits to the plan. Even if we don't, we need to address why we're choosing not to make edits to the plan. And then at the end of the meeting, if we feel like we're in a good place, we're looking for a recommendation from this group to adopt, or a recommendation to Park Board to adopt this plan for the Mount Dean Stone Preserve so that we can go forth and implement. Obviously, if we need to make edits based on public comment, we'll just need to encapsulate that in our motion. Overall, I want to say, and Nathan mentioned this a little bit when he was here, we did have this up on Engage Missoula. We had it linked through. We got 68 public comments, a couple letters within a 2-week period, which is, I think we got more public comments in that 2 weeks than we did the 3 weeks for the Clark Fork Islands, or the 3 or 4 weeks for the Rattlesnake Reservoir, or the South Hill Spur. And so it actually has turned out to be a really good way to engage folks for public comment. So I was actually really impressed by the amount of responses we got. I was a little worried that February is a short month and we had to shave a few days off our public comment period, that we weren't going to get as many comments, but we got a ton. So hopefully you had some time to review it. I think I'll just kind of turn it over to Clancy, and he can start screen sharing. He's developed a great little spreadsheet where we can kind of go comment by comment and work through general themes, and just have that broader discussion and figure out whether or not we need to make changes to the plan. Go for it, Clancy.
All right, hello everybody. Hopefully you can start seeing my screen here. Thought I'd just start real quick with the summary, the synopsis. As Morgan mentioned, overall we got 68 responses to our online survey and received 2 email comments. I realized right off the bat there's a mistake here. This should be February. But anyway, we'll fix that. So the survey was kind of split. There was both closed-ended questions as well as open-ended questions. So this first part really is kind of just looking at those closed-ended questions. And from that, we see pretty good agreement. 82% of respondents strongly agreeing that the management plan strikes a good balance between recreation and wildlife and natural resource protection. We did see 6 respondents, and 3 respondents disagree or strongly disagree with that statement. Again, on the next question, pretty similar, 81% agreement that the management plan provides appropriate recreational trails, designated uses, and trail access for this location. And then similar, 5 respondents both disagreed, and then another 5, or maybe even the same 5, strongly disagreed. There was a question about what activities respondents were most likely to participate on the Mount Dean Stone Preserve. 87% of respondents indicated hiking, 50% biking, 55% dog walking. There's also 39%, 44% participating in skiing and snowshoeing or running. Another couple activities of note was that 18% of respondents indicate that they would hunt on the property. And then we had 3 respondents indicate that they would ride horses. And there's some other comment relating to horse riding later on that we'll get into. The final closed-ended question was just about where respondents are from. We can see that a quarter of respondents were from the immediate neighborhood, the Far Views or Patty Canyon neighborhood. And then really the rest of the respondents were pretty spread out. There was no other neighborhood that was represented by more than 10%. The largest other category was respondents that live outside of the city limits. I presume there was a contingent of Miller Creek folks in that. And then some other regions represented. We can take a look at those numbers in more detail if we want to, but that kind of is a summary of those close-ended questions. This next part is kind of a table that summarizes those open-ended questions. So just the comments that people leave from each one of those close-ended questions, as well as the questions that were just discussion questions. And kind of how I've broken this up is I've made kind of a, comments that are supporting the document, comments that are seeking a specific change to the document, and then as well as comments that are more generally in opposition to the plan. And then I've kind of grouped them into these themes and indicated the number of comments in each one of those themes. We'll jump into this in more detail in just a sec. We'll kind of bring up the spreadsheet. We'll be able to go through each one of these and pull up the comments and all of that. I'll just skip ahead to get through this document. Other public comments, we received a couple of letters, and we can look at those as well. But one letter from the Mountain Bike Missoula really was just a letter of strong support for the plan. And then the other letter was from a number of neighbors who were voicing their concern about allowing rifle hunting in particular on the property. So we can kind of jump into the comments now. So this is a table here, similar to that table that we just saw in the Synopsis report, where I've broken it down into these broad categories of changes, opposition, support, or other, and then broken that further down by theme. And I think it's important to kind of just start with, even though we might not need to talk about changes to the plan or respond to these statements of support, it's good to start with this because we did see in all this comment quite a bit of support for the plan. There was a lot of folks who really just like to see the additional trails that are being opened up in Missoula, that there's trails for all different types of users and uses. And so there's a lot of comments, 38 comments relating to this just increase of access to trailheads in Missoula Valley and a lot of different types of uses. We had just statements of general support. I really love this plan. I'm really excited about this plan, stuff like that. We saw 12 responses actually supporting our dog closure. And over the whole thing, we didn't see too much opposition to that seasonal dog closure. So that was something worth noting. And then there was other support, talking about conservation of open space, splitting the use between pedestrians only and having the multi-use trails. A couple of folks commented on hunting access and support for that. There are a couple of other statements here that I couldn't figure out where to put them in the themes. We can take a look at those real quick, just so you see. Yeah. So these are the couple of comments I couldn't decide where to put them, and we can decide if there's a better spot to put them or not. But this first one was talking about, that they get the wildlife aspect, but you have a dog restriction in there for that. So I think you have that covered. Natural resource protection, question mark. It was heavily logged and there are old roads all over it. So what are you worried about? You will be significantly better land steward than Plum Creek or whoever used to own it. Don't worry about that stuff. That was the second comment. Stated, I love that everyone can enjoy the trails, but this winter, which has been lacking snow up till recently, I ran into snowmobiles during the day where we just had a skiff of snow. There aren't signs up regarding usage. I haven't seen any. Perhaps I missed them, and people are used to recreating at what is now Little Park in different ways, like shooting, having bonfires, parties, etc. So this statement, I felt like, was kind of outside of our purview, being at Little Park Trailhead. So unless there's any other, unless anybody has some thoughts about where those might fit in, or whether we need to respond to those statements in particular, I'll move on.
So can I ask you something, or maybe now's not the right time? Are there rules about snowmobiles up there?
Well, on city property, it's all trails are non-motorized, so no snowmobile use whatsoever.
But
and James, I think it's worth noting that that comment seemed to be really. We did pick up a fair amount of comment about Little Park Creek Trailhead, which is in Upper Miller Creek on Nature Conservancy land. And Inez is the other trailhead over there, Inez and Little Park Creek. And so both of those are on Nature Conservancy land. Neither of them do allow motorized access, so that is something that wouldn't be allowed in that area. We did forward this whole report to our colleagues over at the Nature Conservancy that manage that backside. So those just kind of landed outside of our plan, I guess, geographically.
And then also, didn't you say at our last meeting horses wouldn't be allowed in there?
We did not have. Yes, we don't have horses in the plan.
But there were 3 people who planned to ride horses there, right? Respondents.
Well, yeah, and I think we're gonna. I think it's normally it's worth kind of talking a bit and recognizing the support comments and some of those other comments, but comments calling specifically for change and or totally opposition are ones that we definitely need to take comment by comment and talk about. And so I think, we intend to, we'll get in and talk about the horses for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so in general, I'm just kind of working from the bottom up here, just going over those other statements just to make sure no one else thought they needed to move up into a change category or something like that. So moving into the opposition here, we did have a couple of statements that I kind of categorized as opposition to the plan. We can take a look at those now. The first one is here, and that statement was that we should not spend more tax taxpayer money on recreation. We can't maintain what we have now. And the second statement here, Mount Deanstone is important winter habitat for deer and elk. Why do we need to put new trails in areas where we know we have important deer and elk habitat / winter range? The opening of Inez Trailhead already pushed many elk onto private property that historically came down to Schoolhouse Gulch, especially in the winter. We need to be more considerate to our wildlife. Sometimes our resources are best left alone. This is an open invitation to trammel and skew the natural landscape in a negative manner. So those are the two statements that I found were more generally oppositional to the entire management plan.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting, and Quincy mentioned this, part of our discussion today is certainly seeing if there needs to be changes to the plan, but it's, actually producing a report that says, these were the comments, this is why we've decided not to do this, or we've decided to do this, as a part of the public record that we can also then share with Park Board. So, yeah, I guess on those two opposition ones, I don't know if, in my mind, I think that neither of them really made me want to completely scrap the entire plan and not open the property at all to the public. Unless we have other opinions, then yeah, I guess we just basically say we own it, we have to allow public access, and we're trying to do that as responsibly as possible.
Can I say something?
Oops, go ahead, Kathleen.
Oh, I think this does, though, touch on what I mentioned last time. I really feel like we need to be monitoring the winter use. And I mean, if we are impacting the elk negatively, I feel like we need to adjust the plan. So I don't want us to write it in such a way that that is an impossibility in the future.
I totally agree with you, and thank you for bringing it up. I mean, I think that is important that, when every person that takes the time to comment deserves our consideration. And so I think it really is important to note that I think what you just said there is spot on. I mean, we do need to make sure that we're accurately monitoring trends and being able to react to them so that we can seek that balance. And I guess the question is if you feel that we've addressed that in the plan that we currently have, or if you feel that there needs to be an edit.
I can't remember if we actually wrote that into the plan or if we just made the statement in the motion. So I guess I'd have to go back and see what we said.
We did say specific to the dogs, and I'm looking at it right now from our last meeting, recreational use in compliance with the seasonal dog closure will be monitored to assess the effectiveness of the closure and determine if additional management actions are needed. If compliance with the seasonal dog closure is poor and recreational impacts exceed tolerable limits, closure of this area to all winter recreation should be considered.
That sounds like you nailed it.
Hannah, did you have something to add there?
I was going to comment on the same thing. One thing I would add is just the reminder, if you're trying to reply, that there was a levy for stewardship. And so we're working towards some of the stewardship concerns.
Yes, I think you're spot on. Yeah, I mean, that's, we will respond. Those opposition ones do, I mean, we will need to respond to those. So I think that's a very appropriate answer.
All right, so I'll move into the change category here. And I think these are comments that we probably need to take a little bit more line by line. I have started just on a couple to just draft a response on some of these, so we can look at those and see whether we think they're adequate or not. But I've just started that here. But in general, I think for most of these, every one of these change ones will have to come up with some kind of response on that we can keep track of over here, or changes to the management plan that we are making from those comments. And so in general, they're sorted by number of responses. So just taking it from the top here, we had eight comments relating to parking and not having enough parking to accommodate the use. We can take a look at some of those. So in this statement, this person is saying they have strong concerns that we are going to be funneling many people into the area without providing access/parking, which will maintain the quiet character of the neighborhood.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
That we have neighborhood trailheads all around Missoula with neighborhood parking. That's not just that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that's useful.
It's important. Yeah, no, that's a good consideration.
Yeah, so this next comment is just talking about it's very easy for parking areas needs to outstrip parking spaces. Hope this will be considered.
This is Patrick. I have to imagine those parking comments are mostly related to the Barmeyer trailhead, right?
I think there's a little of both. We definitely see several, there's, number 7 there is, I live on Spanish Peak Drive near the Spanish Peak Drive. I think they're a little confused on the name of the trail, but the Barmeyer Trail, so that's up at Stone Mountain. And is worrying about all the on-street parking that's going to occur there.
Yeah, sorry. I guess if you see references to parking spaces, I imagine they're talking about the Barmeyer trailhead, but street parking would be street parking is the Sousa trailhead.
Well, and I can say, about trailheads getting popular fast and parking out spacing needs, we have that happening across our entire system right now. It's actually a little shocking. I do think one of the unfortunate things about how this parcel developed and grew is that we don't really have other areas for access or trailheads. And so it's just, we're just kind of dealing or, playing the hand that we've been dealt, which just allows for those access points on the South Hill Spur down on Patty Canyon Drive and then up off Spanish Peaks Drive at this point.
Just thinking, just thinking about in our responses too, we may want to be a little bit strategic about how we expect most of the parking to move into Stone Mountain. We might want to come up with a better way to say it, is all I'm saying. Since we know Barmeyer is not going to be expanded, obviously that's the obvious conclusion, but I could see that raising more concerns.
Yeah, and I think that, the city is still working on other solutions for Barmeyer. Being able to make a connection across the street that can connect Mount Sentinel to this whole area would be a huge connection. And so, we're still trying to work on that, but yeah, there's nothing right now that's going to happen. Hannah's point about on-street parking, the Sousa Trailhead hits a public right-of-way, public street right-of-way, and public are allowed to use and park on public streets. And so that is one of the reasons we decided to put that trailhead at the street. And so there is a ability to absorb quite a few cars there.
100%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it certainly will change things in that area for the neighbors, I would imagine.
I'd expect some backlash on that personally. I don't live up there, but I'm up there enough to know. And I think emphasizing that there are long-term plans to, long-term, we're considering ways to address impacts at the Barmeyer Trailhead as well, might just soothe some nerves.
I think that makes sense. I love it that Karen's got her hand up. She's bringing order to this whole thing.
I'm trying. This is reminding me of what's happening right now. And I know we've discussed this multiple times, that this is happening at every trailhead across our system in the Missoula area. But we have some real problems up in Grant Creek at the Ravine Trailhead. And we have little right of way. And there's really no place off the side of the road. People are blocking homeowners' entrances into their homes there. But the biggest problem is that they're creating a situation where only one vehicle can go up and down Grant Creek Road up there. Granted, it might be a little narrower right of way, but it's causing a big safety hazard. The neighbors don't mind people parking and there's only like 4 or 5 spots there, the designated spots, but when it's then going to interfere with any emergency vehicles coming up or down, it's been a real issue since the pandemic. So this is just spurring that in my mind. It's making me think of what's happening up here. Granted, this is a much older road than what we're dealing with at the up here in the South Hills. That's probably a much wider right of way access. But I just want everyone to be aware that we do have some issues in some neighborhoods, and there is a reason why they are so sensitive to this.
For sure. Any other thoughts or comments on parking? I think in general, we've got a good amount of info for a response, but.
There was one comment about asking whether there's potential for revamping or expanding the trailhead over by the gravel pit. And then having some people, I would imagine like people on bikes could park there and bike up to Barmeyer or something like that. Is there anything, is that on the horizon at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are opportunities there as well. Unfortunately, that is all right-of-way parking as well. And depending on what happens with the gravel pit, if it gets sold, there's some unknowns on that whole Patty Canyon Drive road kind of area. And so I think in general, what we're looking for is to be able to find, and that parking was never designed. It's just people pulling off onto a shoulder. And so being able, as we move forward with trailhead development, to actually build a formal trailhead rather than just let people park willy-nilly is kind of where we've been moving overall. And so I think there are options at the gravel pit, but it's nothing concrete.
Good one, Morgan.
Thank you.
Morgan, I do have one question. Is Carol?
Yes.
So do we have a long-range plan for expanding off-street parking at Sousa or not?
We have the ability at Sousa, and I don't know if you guys are looking at the map right now, but that we have an easement on the DeMorris family's driveway where people can drive up their driveway, and then we build a big parking area actually on city open space. And so we could totally convert a large area of open space to asphalt at some point if we want to go that route. When we looked at that before, we really thought, and especially talking with the DeMorris family, they weren't real interested in sharing their driveway with cars coming in and out all the time. And then no matter how big of a parking lot we build there, you're still not going to be able to accommodate as much as you can with on-street parking. And so converting a really nice pristine grassland into asphalt to get 10 to 12 cars on city open space, it didn't really pencil out as far as benefits go.
When some of these connector trails are developed, will that alleviate some of this problem, or will it exacerbate it?
I think, you know, the high wide or the House of Sky one that will connect back to Upper Deer Creek there's a parking area, a seasonal parking area up there that would allow people to come in. I know that Five Valleys and the Forest Service and MTB Missoula are looking at the potential of maybe doing some connections to Sam Braxton Trailhead system. And so that could provide another way for people to come in. Obviously, parking is an issue up there as well. I think more development in the Miller Creek side on those trailheads could certainly help, but yeah. Unfortunately, as far as this plan goes, we're kind of, there's not really many other options besides what we have for existing parking. John, I see your hand up as well.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. So I'm on the Sousa side of this at least once a week. I was there yesterday, ran into Chris Ryan and her husband, and Chris Ryan's a former park board member, and her husband and another couple that were hiking up there. And so I've never seen more than 4 cars, at least right now, at one time at that trailhead. The bad thing about where that trailhead is located is it's in a sharp bend in the road. So if people are parked on both sides there, it could, you know, create some sight, but people are in general slowing down at that turn anywhere. The good thing about that is that there's plenty of room along that road for public parking that doesn't interfere with private property. The more, obviously, to me, in my mind anyway, the more troublesome trailhead is the Barmeyer with that really limited parking. And unfortunately, I didn't go to the bowl yesterday because I knew it was going to be nuts. I got sent a picture from the top showing cars parked over 2 miles back. Our town is just growing, and there are a lot of people that get to where they want to be by being in their cars. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of public transportation options up on Spanish Peak. And so I think we're going to have to deal with cars, and we're going to have to deal with cars overflowing the parking capacity, and just try to deal with them as they come along. We may have to create some parking restrictions like we did at Barmeyer to just respect private property. But I don't see that trailhead doing anything but getting more popular, no matter what we do.
Thanks for bringing that up, John. And Clancy, I know you're taking notes as well as I am. I think it is worth saying, and this probably doesn't warrant a change to the plan, but I think it is worth saying in our response that we commonly work with neighborhoods on these types of issues. And, you know, I've already gone to Stone Mountain HOA meetings about this plan and about the development of the South Hill Spur and that parking. And certainly it's something that we work with neighbors all the time. And so as issues, if we can preempt issues by good signage or designating parking areas or painting curbs as no parking, this is all stuff that we have done in the past quite a bit. John's showing us a picture of something. Snowball parking, I think. We do not want to be like snowballs, that's for sure.
Big cat tracks up there yesterday.
Oh, nice. Oh, cool. Anything else on parking?
Yes, can I add?
Yes.
I just wonder what's our responsibility as a group? I mean, perhaps it's not, but it seems like in a way we're kind of creating some nightmares along with creating nice parks, you know, because the city is growing and people are kind of out of hand in a lot of ways. And so it's wonderful to have all this access, but like, do we have any obligation to kind of think about working with Mountain Lion or working with some other way that we don't just have everything be reliant on cars, and having a longer range vision than just, okay, right now, maybe there's only 4 cars there. But it feels a little bit irresponsible to me, like we're just sort of creating a real nightmare in so many neighborhoods.
So Janice, and it is worth noting that city does have a long-range transportation plan, and I work with Bike Ped Office and folks at Public Works and Mountain Lion, I mean, all the time on this kind of stuff. And so city staff is actively engaged in this kind of stuff at all the time. I don't feel that as CLAC members that you need to be engaged in that level of planning, unless it's something that you're passionate about. But I think, you know, our goal, and I think with this plan, is we need to find really that middle ground of how we can best provide access, responsible access to these properties. And so I think, you know, really our assignment is to get this plan through, is to make sure where, if we've missed anything that we need to consider and change that we have within our power to do, then we need to make sure we do that. The bigger picture and the bus routes and getting people to bike everywhere, that is, oh man, that's mainstream for the Missoula Parks Department. We work on those kind of stuff all the time across. And John is our park board liaison. He sees all this stuff at park board. I mean, we've got multiple other projects working on this kind of stuff, safe route to schools and connecting communities and getting people on bikes. And so that effort is going full bore with other.
Okay. Yeah, it's just that, you know, it seems like it's so wonderful to have all this land and animals and people and trying to interface, but it's also, there's something sort of frightening about the growth that's happening so quickly in Missoula that it's hard to know how best to be with it, really.
Well, that's true. And I mean, I think that's why it does, in my mind, we have been where we're most successful is when we can actually put good thought into good planning and anticipate that kind of stuff. Where we've had our worst problems on some of our lands around property is where we've not gone through these efforts to do this level of planning and development. And it's just been, people have walked in trails and walked in or parked in trailheads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Hannah, I see a question from you, or a hand. Let's keep using those hands, by the way. That works really well.
Are bike racks part of the standard trailhead package?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Just a small thing that could potentially help facilitate more people getting to trailheads on bikes and stuff.
And we do have bus stops up in this area. So, I mean, there are options for alternative transportation. Any other thoughts on parking? I want to make sure we can get through all the others. Is there any, again, this is great discussion. I've been taking notes. I know Clancy has too. I just want to double check. At this point, we're not really recommending any changes to the plan itself. We're just really recommending, you know, kind of answering the questions that we just did. John.
Just a final comment on that parking. And I know that the Parks Department works really hard on these partnerships. It might be worth some signage. The signage that I'm seeing on trailheads is awesome right now. It might be worth some signage, just like, hey, remember to, you know, carpool or take your bike next time. This trailhead is under particular distress. You know, just some reminders to the general public that use it. I know that sometimes I am in my own fog as well, and I'll read something and go, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I think of that? So maybe just some signage right now is one real little mitigation effort that might help.
Totally. And hopefully once this pandemic's over and everybody just wants to hang out again, everybody's going to carpool everywhere. All right, keep it going, Clancy.
That gravel pit would make a nice parking lot. So
it really would. We've got gravel there.
All right, so we'll move on here. The next highest kind of theme of comment was comments related to basically providing more access, more trailheads, more trails. We had 6 comments on that. I'm not sure this one, most of this is talking about lands that are off of our lands. So I think it would be outside of this plan. So I'm not sure that it would warrant any changes to the plan, but we can go ahead and take a look at some of these comments. Yeah, and some of these are kind of aspirational, maybe not necessarily looking for specific changes. So, hoping that work continues to pursue access and lands adjacent to the Moose Can Gully neighborhood, looking for that connection from that area up to the Deanstone. And I know there's been about that. So next one's talking about better connected to existing trails in the area. I think this is the one that Hannah mentioned about potentially connecting across to Mount Sentinel, and how that connection would be great to have.
Skybridge.
Yeah, I like that. And this one is asking for more connections directly to the neighborhoods that allow multiple uses. This one's just kind of one of those aspirational statements. More trails, the better. Looking for a connection specifically to Patty proper. So again, I thought that most of these were, a lot of this stuff that mentioned, the good thing about it is there's talk about a lot of these connections. I don't think that it's necessarily worth putting all of that into the management plan, since those are just discussions that kind of are happening outside of this that are moving forward to some degree or there. Any comments on this?
John, is your hand still up from last time, or do you have a comment? There we go.
All right, so what I had kind of for the response on that was additional access points and trail connections are currently being planned by other organizations on adjacent land ownerships. The city is participating in these discussions, but in most cases, the city is not the landowner of these lands. And so it wouldn't really fall into this management plan.
Perfect.
All right, next we have 4 comments related to dog enforcement. These were all kind of slightly different, but all under the general theme of enforcing restrictions on dogs. First one's talking about making sure the dog owners pack out their waste, and how annoying it is to have poop bags everywhere. Certainly agree. There was some comment about, the voice restraint being difficult to enforce or being actively ignored by people. So here, this third comment here is reinforcing that idea that the restrictions are difficult to enforce. This last comment, I believe, is asking for dogs to be on leash at all times, with some worry about how dogs disturb wildlife, talking in particular about foxes.
I had a couple thoughts there, Clancy. I did want to make sure that question number 3, where the person's also talking about pedestrian safety, e-bikes. Are we going to address those other things in other sections?
Yeah, there's a theme about wanting bike only trails.
Okay. So we're just looking at the dog comment on question number 3, not the others.
Yeah, and in most cases, if one comment fall into different themes, I should have that.
Okay. Yeah, so where I'm trending with this, just so you guys know, and granted, what we're really looking at is to see whether or not we want to make any changes to the plan. Overall, enforcement of dog, we do provide signage and poop bags and trash. We are actively working to upgrade those signs and make them better. Enforcement of that stuff is all through animal control and city police. We do work with them quite a bit, and I do share comments like this with them. just so they know. And I think the other thing that we've been able to make great headway on is we've got a shared front country ranger with the U.S. Forest Service that works across boundary where we have properties that abut Forest Service land. That is slightly changing this year because we've been able to put a little bit more money into the pot with the Conservation and Stewardship Mill Levy. We are going to be able to use that person on land that do not touch Forest Service lands as well. And so that has helped tremendously with just some on-the-ground education. Overall, though, as far as enforcing restrictions, that really does require a little bit more presence on our lands, which we just do not have right now, and is something that we have in our conservation lands plan as a priority to get more dedicated park rangers that do have the ability to both educate and do enforcement. I did want to also, though, we do have in here, I see, there is an actual consideration of putting the entire area on leash all the time. Again, I think the discussion that we had about that at our past meetings was that South Hill Spur has already been designated as on voice restraint, as with all of our other large landscapes. And a lot of this has to do with the inability to largely enforce on leash all the time at the top of Mount Jumbo or something like that. We do have on leash at the trailhead and for a set number of yards away from the trailhead, and then you can take them off leash and on voice restraint. Hannah, I see you got a hand up.
What is the capacity to do something like put the phone number for animal control or whatever enforcement on the signage that says this area is closed to dogs right now? If you see dogs out here, call this number. I feel like we have some responsibility if we're saying we're going to monitor this.
Yeah. Well, and on our signs for Mount Jumbo for the winter closure, we do direct people to call 911. So, we can do that with our closures. When we have an official closure like this, it is considered, on Jumbo, it's considered trespass. This is going to be a little different because you're allowed to be there, but you just have to have your dog on leash. So I haven't even really thought about that as much. And so I guess that would be more of an animal control versus city police. But yeah, we can direct people to who to call on those signs.
I think that's important. I'll acknowledge that I'm part of working with the Nordic Trail system in town. We've seen a huge increase in people knowingly bringing dogs onto places that are signed to no dogs. And you ask them, did you realize there were signs? And they're like, oh yeah, I know there are signs.
Right.
Seeing that balloon this winter in a way we haven't experienced before.
Yeah, I like that recommendation. I wrote that down. I think that's an easy one to do on those signs. Any other comments or thoughts on dogs and dog comments or needs for changes to our plan?
I've seen signs that literally have a little fairy like silhouette that says there is no poop fairy, pack out dog waste. The other thing is there an ordinance or state law about dogs harassing wildlife? Like maybe, some statement. I always think when the signs, say something about it's not just whether or not you feel like complying, this is actually illegal.
Yeah, that is a state law. And we have had FWP rangers write tickets for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Just, it's so hard because it's like, you really want to somehow communicate that your right to do this, to continue to have this access is dependent on your behavior. And this is why we can't have nice things when you don't do it well.
You sounded like a parent there. This is why we can't have nice
or
things.
a teacher.
Yeah.
There you go.
No, and I think it really does fall on the lines. We've got to do a better job of educating the public. And I do feel in this plan we have set up, and we had a good discussion about beefing up more educational signs, especially about dogs and especially about that closure. And So I think it's about crafting the right ones and doing the best we can from that point. And, once you're up there in the wilds, it's largely user versus user, unfortunately, at that point. Jameson, I think your hand came up first before John.
Yeah, I just wondered do we have a lot of, do we have some flexibility that if the dog thing gets out of hand, it would not be a big deal to limit that? Or are we kind of stuck once it's dog's okay, they're always okay going forward? Because it's also been my experience that dogs, that they're just so many more this year than in prior years. It's like they've multiplied.
They do. Yeah, I mean, I think it is. It's really tough. I mean, I think, I work closely with folks at Animal Control. They've got 4 or 5 officers for the entire county. And so I think that is part of the problem as well, is it's not just when we rely on other entities to help enforce our ordinances, you kind of end up, you have to, you get what you have. And we've only got 4 or 5 officers. And so I think, overall, for instance, that dog ordinance, the voice restraint area was created back in 2012. Before that time, it was any dog in the city limits had to be leashed at all times. Right. So on Jumbo, on the North Hills, all of that stuff. And that's when we realized, this is totally impossible to enforce.
Yeah.
And so, I know a lot of other communities have gone to, voice restraint. You have to actually prove that your dogs do respond, and you get a ticket or a tag that they can have that allows them to be off leash. I don't think we're there yet, but I think there's, as pressure increases, as things change, I mean, we will have to, and in the scope of this plan, I don't know if we can really add more to what we have. It's really about and working with our partners.
Yeah, I just wondered if it might be helpful to have some kind of language, that might help people understand, if the dog, I mean, this isn't how we would write it, but if the dog situation deteriorates, we may have to make it a non-dog area. I mean, it's a city. You can't have dogs racing around in Central Park as much as you might like to, and so I'm just thinking 10 years down the road, would it be helpful to have language like we have with the closures that allows a change, or would that become a big deal?
I don't necessarily think we need to have that in the plan. What we're talking about is a change to the city's ordinance.
Okay.
And so it lives above this plan. I mean, the ordinance.
Okay. That's what controls is the ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
John, I think you had your hand up.
I did. I took it down. I mean, that was going to be my point, is that this is the plan, and then there's the enforcement is outside of this plan. So we may be kind of dragging this out to something that's not within our kind of purveyance to consider. But and I also said I think maybe a sign about education is good, but I think we do have to be a little careful about how many signs we put up, because they become a little bit of white noise. I like having the kiosks at trailheads where they're available with the rules on them and hitting them in one place. I think if we just have signs all over the place, people might tend to ignore them. There are some opportunities on this particular parcel, though, where we have intersections with private property and there's already other signs up saying, please stay on the trail. Those might give us secondary education points where we could put up signs on each of those and not just have them all at the main trailhead. That was my 2 cents.
Any other thoughts on dogs? All right, keep us moving, Clancy.
Yep. So the next theme was about hunting. We had 4 comments from the survey, and then the additional letter that we can take a look at as well. In general, there was some concern about lamb hunting on the property. So first statement just says not allow hunting at all. This statement talks about how there are lots of other opportunities to hunt, and wouldn't have any problem at all if hunting was not allowed in the plan. Next one, I put it in this category, but I'm not sure, in the end, it sounds like they kind of figured out that we seem to strike a good balance, but they didn't seem too crazy about allowing hunting on that property. And then this one is kind of about the larger user conflicts and mixing hunters, dogs, bikers, hikers, whether that be bow or rifle hunting. And in this one, they talked about how there are several other boarding lands open to hunters, and there's ample opportunities to hunt elsewhere. The letter that we received from some of the neighbors of the area really focused in on allowing rifle hunting in particular. They brought up some of the ordinances related to the discharge of firearms within the city limits, and talked about the risks. And as far as I could tell, they were okay with potentially allowing archery, but were concerned about rifle hunting in particular.
So just to throw it out there, currently the way we have it written is that hunting would be contingent upon development of a hunting management plan between the city and Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. Public hunting would only be allowed on the upper 239 acres of the Mount Dean Stone Preserve. The hunting management plan would determine the specific details regarding hunting seasons, game species, allowable methods of take, so obviously rifle, bow, that kind of stuff, and other site-specific considerations. And then, of course, on-site signage to educate folks about the potential of hunting. And so really, the plan as it sits right now allows for public hunting, allows the city to move forward with developing a hunting management plan that meets city ordinances, city municipal code, Montana Fish State ordinances, and then, just allows us to further plan for safe hunting in the location. It doesn't really describe what types of take would be allowed, whether it be bow or rifle or shotgun or atlatl or any of that kind of stuff. It is worth noting, we did go back and dove into Montana Municipal Code a little bit more, and I did not actually realize it because it had been so long since we did this code, but currently within the city limits, which this property is not, a firearm is anything, including a bow and arrow, including a pellet gun, anything that can be shot pretty much. And you're not allowed to discharge firearms within the city limit. And then the provision does allow for a hunting management plan with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and it specifically mentions just archery. And so currently our city ordinance does specifically mention only archery, and that was something that I was, I for some reason thought it was just firearms. And so my current take is that I do not believe we would be allowed to allow anything but archery hunting within city limits with an approved management plan unless we rewrote a city ordinance. And so, again, I'm just throwing this out there as food for thought. We delved into the ordinances a little bit more. I still don't feel that our one paragraph on public hunting, it doesn't talk about any of that stuff. It just says we would develop a plan with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks that would meet city ordinances, municipal code, and And so I don't know if there's a need for change unless we feel that we do not want to allow hunting on this 239 acres at all.
Morgan?
Yes.
I would tend to agree with you. It looks to me like we've covered our bases with leaving it open to having a discussion with FWP and making a hunting management plan with them. So we're not making a definitive decision in this plan what it should be, and that then could be at a later date. And I also noted that you do have about 18% of the comments were also wanting to keep it open or pro-hunting. I don't know quite how you classified that. And then you had these four comments. So it seems to me that we could leave it as is, and if there are issues once FWP has made a decision on how to do this, and we could revisit it.
I think that's a very good point about the amount of comment which was pro hunting and was thankful for opening up the upper areas. Yeah. Any other thoughts on hunting? Thank you, Carol. All right, no recommended changes. We'll encapsulate kind of the discussion that we just had.
All right, so next is allowing horses. We had 3 comments, I believe. These comments were all from the same individual, but then there were also those, 3 or 4 folks who indicated in the closed-ended questions that they would like to horseback ride on the property. Here are the comments, pretty simple: allow horses and mountain bikes. Horses should be allowed, and this is Montana. Horses should be allowed on these trails. My response to this at this point was that trails in this area were not built to accommodate equestrian users. Per the 2010 Conservation Management Plan, equestrian use is limited to trails with a minimum width of 48 inches and a turn radii of 10 to 12 feet, which the trails on this property do not meet. Anything to add to that, Morgan?
No, not really. I think in general on some of our other properties and within that same, we tend to steer most equestrian use to our developed road networks and systems because those were ones that actually do have good turn radii and can accommodate a horse. There's a little bit of that up at the very top of the mountain, but the majority of what we're dealing with are single track trails that don't have good turn radii and would, I think you'd have a significant amount of user conflict if we allowed horses in addition to bikes and hikers on really tight trails that would be hard to navigate a horse on anyway. I think the other thing about horses, and I could see, depending on who, there's not a lot of horse owners in the South Hills. There are some, but bringing a horse trailer to the Sousa Trailhead or the Barmar Trailhead would probably cause a lot of conflict. And so, I would imagine most horse use would come up from the Miller Creek side, in which case, there's 3,000 acres and, miles and miles of road and opportunity for equestrians over there. And so again, I don't feel that, I feel like we've kind of designed, excluded horses and just really focused on pedestrians and bikes just based on our access points and the way our trails are built.
Did you say last meeting that there was a rule about no horses on city trails?
Just on our road systems.
Yeah, but is there an actual rule prohibiting horses? Or is it just sort of discouraged?
Yeah, our conservation lands management plan is what provides recreational use. When we call a pet-only trail, I mean, that's just within our management plans and our signage. It's not enforced by law. And so if someone goes and rides a horse on one of our trails, we can politely ask them not to do it, or if but you're not going to be able to ticket them. I just think that you'd have a horrible experience trying to take a horse up this narrow trail with a whole bunch of bikes and peds running and dogs off leash running around. And so.
Well, it also is, it creates the potentially of really somebody getting badly hurt,
Yes, in an area that's hard to access.
Right.
Clancy, just real quick, I was kind of going through the plan. Did we specifically say that the area would be closed to equestrian use?
No, not that I'm aware of. I don't recall that at all.
I'm not seeing it. I see pet only and public non-motorized. I don't see anywhere in here that we actually say that the trails are closed to horses. And so I think that is a question that we might want to address, or not.
Morgan, we talked about it at the end of the last meeting, you and I did, and that's why I was a little confused, because you said that the language that I recall you said was, we don't allow horses on city trails. And so I don't know if somebody may have read the minutes or was listening and didn't speak, but we did talk about this just a little at the last meeting.
Yeah, I do recall that, and it does refer back to our Conservation Land 2010 Management Plan, which it specifically allows equestrian use on those wider trails and our road systems. But these trails do not meet those. I mean, some of the roads around the top do, but the rest do not. And so, honestly, I wonder if we do want to make an edit in here that just says that, due to the design, like we might want to actually say that the area is not open to horses.
I think that might make some sense, because again, I just have to say, in my neighborhood, there's people bringing horses into Tower Park and the state lands, and just the other day there were people with 2 horses that were not they were running free like dogs do.
Were they on voice restraint?
No, people were not on them. The horses were running along, in the so I mean, I've never seen that before in 30 years here, but this year. So who knows what the future, people come and they think, oh, I'm in Montana and anything goes, kind of.
So, yeah, and I mean, there's definitely a level of impact there. Jameson, do you want to kind of make a recommended edit here that we add based on trail design, and that the area is not suitable for equestrian use?
Sure, I would recommend that we put in that horses, exactly what she said. The trails are not designed for the safe use of safe equestrian use, or do we want to use the word prohibited? Is that too firm, or?
I think that's fine. We can just refer back to the 2010 plan that has stronger language about, where it's, but I think at least adding that it wasn't designed for it or not.
Yeah, I think due to trail design and narrowness and lack of turnaround, it's completely reasonable.
Can you say trails and trailheads?
Yeah, and trailheads, because of lack of space.
And so this is we're on an action item here, so we will vote on this at the end of the talk. I am the time police. We are over time for this section. We have 20 minutes left in our meeting. I know there's a number of themes to still cover here, so I'm not sure, Clancy, the best way to get this going here and wrap it up in the next 5 minutes, but I challenge you to do that.
And do we need to get comment from the public on the horse proposal because somebody made a thing there?
No, we don't.
Or do we just let it roll?
It will go to Park Board. That is another open public meeting that people can attend.
I just meant at this meeting, you know, how Giles asks if anybody's out there wants to say anything.
Oh, we can do that when a motion is made at the final, at the end. We might have some other edits that we want to
Oh,
have. We
okay.
can do it at the end.
Okay.
Yeah. Carry on, Clancy.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure how to wrap this up in 5 minutes, but I guess there are a number of other, the ones that we have left are largely related, or, you know, 1 or 2 mentions. I guess I'd first just ask the group if there were any comments that they received, that they reviewed, that you want to bring up now that you feel like is worth changing the management plan. I think, you know, I can just kind of review each of these real quickly without jumping to line by line. But we had 3 comments related to either closing the trails completely during the winter for impacts to elk, or, you know, removing trails, especially up on the summit, because that's such an important area for elk. We had 3 comments related to avoiding overuse of the area. To me, these comments weren't really in enough detail to know how you would change the management plan to address that. Comments related to better signage, which again didn't really give enough detail in my mind to know how to change the management plan. But we haven't talked today about signage, and that is part of the plan, and that educational signage will be developed, and there's still some flexibility within that to tailor those signs. Building steeper grades. We know 1 comment was talking about the PED trail specifically, which the PED trail per our designs will be built with a steeper grade. And another comment was talking about the trail system in general, that an 8% grade wasn't steep enough.
Yeah, I think on that one, and again, I just want to touch on a few of these, but yeah, our trail system's already built. And so it's a little bit spilled milk in this kind of situation. I do think that PED trail, it is worth noting, will be built at a significantly steeper grade, you know, 15% average, I believe, with our max little portions at 20. And so that is going to be a heck of a lot steeper. But it still fits our sustainability guidelines for trail construction.
There were a couple comments asking us to change the high, wide, and handsome trail name, which, you know, my response here was that the trail name is a working name used for reference only. There's no officially adopted trail names for any of the new trails, including this. That naming will follow our process of any approved names through Parks Board. So, you know, maybe we did make 1 change from a staff comment to the map to make that more clear on the trail map, that names in the map are for reference only. So I think that helps with clarity a little bit on that issue in particular. A couple of comments on needing a more comprehensive invasive species management. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Morgan, but this plan really is focused on recreation, and the invasive management plan is kind of outside of this. So I don't see the need to include any more details on that. They seemed concerned that we're just spraying at the beginning of of building the trail, but anything.
That is true. We did mention that in our appendix on best management practices. Yeah, I think the other thing there, Clancy, is we do need a comprehensive, updated invasive species management plan for our entire conservation land system, not just for this parcel. And so, you know, that is something that we are already as staff talking about and working towards. And so I think that is, you know, more in line with an update to the broader conservation land management plan. And so that is, that's outside the scope of, I think, the Mount Dean Stone recreational and special use or special resource plan.
Okay, then these last comments, they just had one each. One person asked to add a disc golf course. Another person requested that no bikes be allowed whatsoever on the parcel. This comment about winter access, this person thought that there wasn't enough detail on winter access and what that would look like. I don't think we do mention, whether specifically skiing or snowshoeing is allowed, but I believe that that is allowed as pedestrian use. I'm not sure if it's worth mentioning that or not.
Yeah, I don't know if it is.
And just on this final one, this is talking about the restricted areas on top. This is maybe one area that I thought could warrant some clarity in the plan. I did receive one phone call and this comment. People seem to be confused about the restricted areas on top, and it might be worth clarifying that language a little bit, because we're not like putting up fences or actively restricting people's access into those areas. It's just an area that we're trying to passively discourage people from using.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting, as much as we want people to stay on trail, and that is our policy, people do wander. And we really took this from our Clark Fork Islands plan, where we had areas that had kind of high resource value or high conflict area. And we just really set in the plan a note that through restricted access, if in the future someone decides to build more trails and open up this plan again, then it would kind of prohibit that, or at least show that there's reasons why we didn't do trails there. And I think it also helps with management staff kind of setting a little bit of priority, where if we do start getting proliferation of user trails or other activities in those areas, we really are a little bit more aggressive than in other locations. And so it helps kind of prioritize a bit of our management. And those are the, restricted access sites kind of up at the top of the mountain, where the corridor really narrows down before you hit the saddle property, and we got the elk wallow. And then also up at the top, I think where we had some of the communication tower info. And so just making sure that people are really staying on trails, and we'll reinforce sometimes with temporary signage or slashing in trails or providing slash on the landscape. And so it provides us a little bit more I hate to say management authority, but a little bit more management emphasis in some of those areas where we know we have a lot of conflict or a lot of potential resource damage. So, but I don't know. I'm kind of reading it now, and I don't know if we need to change it so much. Did you have a thought on? We got a full paragraph here about users on the saddle and the forest opening up and discouraging off-trail travel for hazardous communication equipment, privacy concerns, and sensitive wildlife habitat. We got some drift fences or some jackleg fences going in to just kind of funnel people through there. I feel like we kind of encapsulated it, but any other thoughts?
I might just, the only spot I think would be the map. If people don't read the narrative and just look at the map, maybe, and I'm not looking at the map at the moment, but at the top where this has a small description, maybe add in there somewhere areas where use will be discouraged, or something like that.
I think that's a really good idea. We did end up making that change on the Clark Fork Islands map, where we had the same restricted use area, and we actually put a label on the map, kind of like Giles when he was talking about labeling private property on the orientation map, actually labeling, public access discouraged, I think is what we did on Clark Fork Islands map, just to really, yeah. And so I guess if you guys are okay, we can kind of maybe add an extra label on that restricted access zone map, or define it a little bit more in the legend on those maps. I think it is totally covered in the narrative. We got 2-3 paragraphs about it.
I think that looks good. Possibly you want to put that it's restricted access because of communication towers.
Yeah. Yeah, up there were.
Okay, we're starting to get into our critical timing here, and we still have a lot of business. So we're gonna have to speed talk, or I'm not sure, Clancy, what else is crucial in our themes here in the count of themes?
That's the crucial bits. If anybody else had any comments that they reviewed that they want to bring up, yeah, we kind of got through the crucial bits. It seemed like we had a couple of edits, but most of this was just coming up with these responses. I've got an edit to the map to add the label, and then an edit to add the language about equestrian use.
And so while we chew on that and wonder if there are any other things to add to our motion, I think we'll give this time for the public to chime in if there is any public to chime in out there. So I'm going to read my script. We're on agenda item 4.1, Mount Deanstone Recreation Special Resource Management Plan. It is an action item. If you'd like to comment on this action item, we're going to open the phone lines and we'll take comment after staff report. Our meeting administration put the call on numbers on the screen now. And if you have vision difficulties, 1-267-831-0333, 1-888-475-4499. Our meeting ID is 960-049-3694. And we'll answer the calls as they come in. 3-minute limit on comments. And as we're waiting for the public to potentially comment, I want somebody to formalize the action item to a motion to approve the action item, or with the said changes.
We have no public comment.
All right.
So we're looking for a motion to approve for Park Board, to recommend that Park Board adopt this plan with the edits that we've just provided. So
I'll make that motion. A motion that we ask the Park Board to accept our plan with our edits about the equestrian and what was the other one? Was there another edit?
adding labels to the map to.
Labels on the map, yeah.
Hey, Jameson, can you
Yes.
read the decision that is written with those in it for me?
Sorry. So strange not being able to see who's speaking. What is it you want me to say? The equestrian thing? That we're prohibiting equestrian use?
Joe, do you want me to read it? Because I can read it and then Jameson can just second it. I've got it in front of me.
I appreciate that.
I recommend that we approve the Mountain Dean Stone Recreation and Special Resource Management Plan with the proposed edits, and recommend Missoula Parks and Recreation Board adopt the plan.
I'll second that, Karen.
Thank you.
Any opposition out there in Zoom land? Okay, that's a unanimous approval to the Parks Board. We recommend this plan move forward. Appreciate all your efforts on that. Clancy, thank you for going through that. Really great, stellar work. We're going to move through our last two discussion items. One is the site visits to conservation lands, and the other will be conservation lands manager update. I know Morgan will be succinct. I am wondering though, if we are on task to open the Mount Jumbo on March 15th.
Yeah, if you guys are okay with it, I might just get right to the update. I did want to mention, and I do still have it on my radar. At our next April meeting, we'll be giving kind of and it's a little bit late, but we've been spread a little thin, kind of a season update for everything we did last year, and then our plans moving forward in this next year. We will be introducing our new conservation lands manager. I also do want to take a time to actually formalize that list that we talked about, where we're going to just kind of really highlight some areas that we want to focus a little bit more of our field trips on, your own personal field trips to go out and get a